Boker Tov, everybody. Okay, welcome class number 119 as we'll continue the bracha of Gula, the third bracha of the that are surrounding Kriyat Shema, two and two before, Yotzer HaMorot and Oheva Mo Yisrael HaBocher Mo Yisrael Bi'ava. And we, of course, we spoke about that Shema. And now the bracha of Gal Yisrael, which we pointed out a few weeks ago, it is a bracha. Sometimes we lose sight of that. We somehow don't view it as a bracha because it doesn't start with Baruch. So Ava Rabba will view as a bracha because it's right after, Baruch. But here we got Shema in between, and we know when two brachot are next to each other, it doesn't begin with Baruch. So Shema is not really like an interruption. But when they're separated, they are Baruch. That's why we mentioned on the Shabbat brachas when you get married. Let's say the seventh bracha it begins Baruch, even though the sixth bracha just ended, Misameach Chatan, what is it, Sameach to Samach, and then that ends with Misameach Chatan Imakala, and the last one is Vikala, or I forget which is which, but the seventh bracha starts with Baruch Atah, because that's an independent bracha. As a matter of fact, without getting into all the halachot, sometimes that bracha can be said when the other brachot cannot be said. So since it's independent, even though it's said next to the sixth bracha, it is considered its own bracha and has to begin with Baruch. The brachot of the Shmona Esrei are not independent of each other. The halach is if you miss one of the 19 brachot, you have to repeat the whole Shmona Esrei. And we all know that from Yalav Yavo. We all know that from B'tein Talumat or Mashiv Haruach. I think, we were taught that if you miss Mashiv Haruach, 4 words, that's it. You got to repeat the Shmona Esrei. So it's not, the brachot are totally not independent, which is actually a fascinating idea, something we can pick up on, hopefully in a couple of weeks when we get to do the Shmona Esrei. But the brachot are interconnected, and that's why the order is important, etc., which is why none of them start with Baruch. So Emet V'Yatziv, which we've been discussing the past couple of weeks, is just a continuation of Habocher B'Amo Yisrael B'Ahava, which we have a little pause for Shema in the middle. Yocheved, you have a question already. That's good.
Oh, well.
Anything yet? Introduction. Okay, Bakasha.
Okay. So I was listening to Dr. Mark Shapiro's one of the recent recordings, and somehow he was on the subject of whether or not you can repeat lines, like if the chazan.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So he said something interesting.
Baruch Torah,
Right.
Baruch. Okay, I'm sorry. Go on. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So he said that if you say a bracha in Shemona Esrei and you realize that you said it in your mouth, but your mind was a million miles away, you're allowed. You can repeat it. Which I had never. So now you're saying that they're interconnected. You really can't do that. You'd have to repeat the whole Shemona Esrei.
Oh, no, I'm not exact. I do remember he did speak about that, repeating words. I don't remember this exact point in the context, but I will say, I don't want to give a whole thing about repeating words. I don't have to tell you in the yeshivish world, that's very not accepted. They hum and they can't repeat words. With those places where they even sing, many they don't sing anything. But as you know, it's a long-standing tradition. Chazanim repeat words all the time, and many there was, is that right or wrong? So it depends. In the Gemara, it's only wrong for modim, and you're not allowed to say modim twice because that sounds like you have two gods, modim anachnu lach, and the Gemara lists, the Mishnah in Brachot lists 3 things that we remove the chazan. It says, Al kan sipor yagiu rachamecha. That's a hard one. If God's mercy extends to the birds, because we have to send away the mother birds, modim, and I forget the Abal hatov yizacher shemecha, and your name should be remembered for good. In other words, implying that God is only responsible for good in the world, but not for the bad in the world. But to say Hallel, the whole Hallel, we repeat, whatever tune you sing, or why do we say Otcha twice? It's only once in Tehillim. But that's, I think there was something nice about repeating, and many poskim did justify repeating words, as long as you don't go David ben Yishay ben David. You got to make sure you're not going totally, doesn't make sense. But so some people don't like I did Baruch Shenatan Torah. It sounds like 2 Torahs, but the Gemara doesn't say that. There is 2 Torahs, Torah Shebichtav and Torah Shebal Peh. So I don't know. I don't get too excited. I mean, but it's out of style today to repeat words. But it's not necessarily problematic, especially if you do a whole pasuk. It's not really a problem. We do that. We do in Hallel. the Tiferet Yisrael, I think, says anything that fits in the tune. Tunes are important. The mood that creates all kinds of atmosphere. So we know sometimes if you don't repeat words, the tune doesn't. It doesn't work right, and you go ha 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 bum 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 bum. It's not quite the same thing. So yes, there's certain things you don't repeat, and like I say, it's not in style anymore. But it's not such a terrible thing to repeat words here and there. Even what can I tell you? But yeah,
Okay,
so
so
yeah.
we'll discuss this, I guess, when we get to Shmona Esrei, like the halacha, whether or not if you have
Yeah,
kavanah,
no. So
you have
you have to go
kavanah.
back. No. So if you remember that you forgot, you're in the bracha of Al Hatzadikim Al Chasidim, and you remember it's so nice out today. Baruch Hashem, we missed winter this year. We had one cold day this week, minus winter, but we haven't. They decided to skip winter this year, whatever global warming. So you didn't say V'tein Tel Matar because we don't have this, and you remember it. So then you go back. You have to go back all the way. Well. No, you can add it in Shomei Tefillah. Sometimes if you forgot Hamelech HaKadosh. So you've said Hakel HaKadosh instead of Hamelech. So you have to go back to the first three brachot. The first three brachot is one unit. But if you forget, then you can go back like to you go back to where you forgot and you move forward. You can't just to stick it in. Sometimes you can in Shomei Tefillah. So we do have halakha. Sometimes you
You
go
were
back.
saying that if not that you forgot to say something, but if you realize you said it, but you didn't have kavanah. Now that I never heard.
That's a different question. No. So that's a different
Yeah.
question. So you're supposed to daven with kavana. So that's what happens if you don't daven with kavana. I don't know anybody have you ever met a person who didn't daven with kavana? I've never heard of such a thing. But they tell me such a thing exists. So So that's a big debate in general. Without getting into it, there is an idea that the first bracha of Shemona Esrei, and only that. First of all, there are two types of kavanah. So and there, whatever, it's a huge topic. When you need kavana, when don't. But there is kavana to think about what you're saying and the meaning of the words, and that's a better kavana. Then there's a general kavana, which everybody agrees is enough. But you're standing before God. You're not really focusing on what you're saying, but you're done. That's also kavana. So the first bracha of the Shemona Esrei needs extra kavana. So the halach is if you don't have kavana, if you were dreaming, you were thinking about the hockey game last night, you know what it is. Did I say Elenu or didn't I say Elenu? So how much was the Elenu worth? So you have to repeat the first. They have to repeat the first bracha, and then the Ramah. I think it's the Ramah. I'll check. It's so beautiful. I love it. We don't repeat it. Why don't we repeat it? Because you're not going to have kavana the next time either. You'll be OCD. You'll repeat it 400 times until you make sure you have kavana. So the halacha says really taka. Maybe you didn't really daven. No. What are we going to do? Go daven 18 times until you get it right. The halacha is if a person is depressed, distressed. I wouldn't even say depressed, distressed. He's whatever. He lost a lot of money in the stock market. Even something is sort of quote unquote, you say it's insignificant. It's not insignificant. So you don't daven. The halach is you don't daven. You're not in the mindset to daven. You have to be in the proper frame of mind. But the halach is we don't follow that today. There are lots of things we don't do today, because we never have kavana. My favorite one of these is when you get married. So you're not supposed to daven marif at night. Not that you don't have to. You're not allowed to. A chutzpah. A guy says Kriyat Shema the night he gets married. Give me a break, because when you say Shema, you have to have Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemaim. You've got to accept the yoke of heaven, as we discussed. When a guy davens Mariv on his wedding night, he's not thinking about accepting the yoke of heaven. Give me a break. So the halach is he's not allowed to daven, and if he davens, it's a chutzpah. It's what we call yuhara. We've spoken a few times. I don't know how many times I've mentioned yuhara. Yuhara is a neglected topic. Do people know what yuhara is? I'll explain, but I'm just curious.
Like arrogance.
Right, religious arrogance. This is, as Chaim Soloveitchik points out in his article, Rupture and Reconstruction, this has gone out the window. Nobody follows this halacha, but it's a real halacha. It's an important halacha. You're not allowed to show off in mitzvot. So Rav Avadia Yosef, I believe, we discussed that. Should you wear your tzitzis out? Many people say no. Well, who are you to wear your tzitzis out? Right? And all kinds of things you're not allowed to do. We're not allowed to tefillin all day. All kinds of things. The halacha says X, and in practice we say no. X is forbidden, even though X is required, because it's yuhara. Or not only in all kinds of things. You're not allowed to show off. only mitzvah between man and man you can show off. When you give tzedakah, you're supposed to show off because that encourages others. But you keep glad kosher, you don't use the eruv and all that we spoke about last week, you're not supposed to show off. It's yuhara, it's prohibited. So a person who says Shema the night he gets married is forbidden. That's what it's in the Gemara. It's not like some Akron says it. It's in the Gemara that it's prohibited. And Rabban Gamliel did say Shema the night he got married. So his student said, whoa, what are you doing? You're not allowed to say Shema. He says, what can I do? I can't forsake it for one day. When you're Rabban Gamliel, we'll let you say Shema on the night you get married. But even there, his students said, this is not correct. You taught us where Rabban Gamliel had taught them they're not allowed to say Shema when they get married. So Tosfot already points out today you're not allowed not to daven Mariv. Today you have to daven Mariv. You have to say Shema, because if you don't daven Mariv, the implication is 364 days a year. I do think about accepting the yoke of heaven. Just when I get married, I don't think about it, so I don't daven. But if I'm not going to a chutzpah, you never think about accepting God. So today we never do Kabbalah Malchut Shemaim properly. So therefore, you have to daven every day. You have to daven even when you get married. It's against the Gemara. The Gemara says you're not allowed to daven married the night you get married. You're not allowed to say Shema, because that would be arrogance, because you're not really focusing. But since we never focus anyway, you might as well say it. So I love these halachot, because the halachot are being so realistic and so understanding what human beings really are like. And what can we say? You can try to do your best. But anyways, okay. So repeating new. That should be the biggest problem we have. Somebody repeats words in the tefillah. Okay, yeah, sometimes there are certain technical things you're not supposed to do, but that's not. I don't know that it'd be the biggest thing we have to worry about. If I hope that's okay to say. Okay, but let's get back here to Emet V'Yatziv. Let's try to finish up the bracha. So we ended up last week. I said, first of all, we talked about permanence. Kayam. You'll see that I asked you to point out when you say it, like when you said it last week, just to notice how much it talks about forever, prehistory, post-history. It's a very notion that we love the mitzvot, the emet, yatziv, nachon, kaim. It's all great for our fathers, our ancestors, our descendants, and on and on and on, over and over again. It's quite repetitive, actually. If you think about it, it says it in different words, but the same theme over and over again. And then we'll have a whole history of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Talks in general terms, and then the last half of the bracha from whatever, after Ezra Rabbeinu, where do we start? Mi Mitzrayim Ke'olkanu. Hashem Elokeinu v'Eid Avadim Pedidanu, right towards the end of the bracha. It's all about Egypt. Mi Mitzrayim Ke'olkanu, if you have a Siddur in front of you. You took us out of Egypt, Mi Beit Avadim, the house of slaves, Peditanu, Kol B'choreim Harakta, you killed their firstborn, B'chor Chaga'alta, our firstborns you redeemed, Yam Supakata, you split the sea, Yazedim Tibata, the wicked ones you drowned, Yedidim, those who are Yedid Nefesh, those who are your beloved, your friends, Havarta, you passed them through, V'yechasu Maim Sareim, the water covered over our enemies, Achad Mehem Lo Notar, not one of them was left over. So the Medrash has a comment on that. I forget the exact wording in the pasuk. There was one person, Achad Mehem, who did survive. Who was the Achad Mehem? I don't know. Who's the Achad Mehem who did survive? It's a beautiful midrash. It probably isn't true. I mean, what I mean, it's not true. Like midrash and man say literal. I don't know. Maybe it is literal, but I don't know what happened to him. But okay, I don't really care. But the point of the medrash is a beautiful point, of course. So we let Paro, the greater part for sufferings, to see all the chariots, to see how he's destroyed. So you keep the leaders alive sometimes to see what they wrought on their people. But anyways, Achad Mehem Lo Notar, the simple pshat, nobody survived. Alzot Shivchu Ovim, because of this are those who are the beloved ones. That's us, the Jewish people who love God. Remember, we're right after Shema, V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha. Avim, we have that a few times. Romamu El, they exalt the Romaim to raise up God. V'natnu Yedidim Zemirot, and we sang Zemirot as Yeshir Moshe, right? Shirot v'tishbachot. We're back Yishtabach, right? The beginning of the end of Tzuk Kedizim, and now we're going to say all these praises. Shirot v'tishbachot, songs and praises, brachot, blessings, v'hodot, thanksgiving. L'melech el chai v'kayam, to the living king, the permanent king. Chai v'kayam, Ram v'nisa, exalted and high, gadol v'norah. Of course, we're going to say that in the Shmon Esrei, El hagadol, Gibor v'hanara. Mashpil ge'im, magbi shvilim, he lowers the arrogant ones. Yuhara is arrogance. That's the rabbis don't like arrogance. The matter of fact, the Gemara says that when people are arrogant, you know what happens with arrogant people? You know what they do? They drive out God. The Gemara says when somebody's arrogant, there's not enough room. Someone is, such he's full of himself. There's no space for anybody else. So that's what the Gemara says. When somebody's arrogant, God cannot be in the same place with that person. There's no room for someone arrogant. Doesn't have space for anybody else. And we mentioned many times, we all know, but we have to repeat it again. Of course, the only trait described in Moshe was he's anab, he's humble. Right? Because when you experience greatness, you should become humbled. And Moshe experienced the greatest greatness. So humble, and that's a very important idea that God is humble. And we've said it before. You know what? What's the pasuk after Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Vanara? That is the pasuk. So we'll do the first line in the Shmon Esrei, right? Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Vanara. Where does that come from? Anybody?
Amish Devarim, when then Moshe goes on about how Hashem is kind and generous and good.
What comes next? You have the pasuk in front of you?
No.
I'm going to share my screen. I'll show you the pasuk. It's pretty.
It's in Bereshit,
no?
when he meets the king of Shalem.
No, that's something else. Yeah, that's related. Just give me a second here.
All right.
Go here. That's a thing I have for my class. Okay, in school. We'll forget that. Just give me a second. I think it's so powerful. I'll just show it to you. I believe it's Parak. I didn't set this up. I believe it's the 10th Parak. Okay, we'll do Chabad here. That came up first. Okay. Maybe not. Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay, so Moshe tells. Right. Okay, what does God want from you? Just be here it is. The Avodah Hashem. Just all you have to do. Fear him. Okay, we're not going to talk about that now. And then the pasuk says, "Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor." God is great and powerful and awesome. What's so awesome? You can't bribe God. Okay, that's interesting. Lo yisa panim. He doesn't show favoritism, right? That's what it means, lo yisa panim. You treat everybody equally. You can't bribe him. That's the same idea. Osem mishpat yatom v'almana. God does takes care of the widow and the orphan. He loves the convert. He loves the stranger. So this is the greatness of God. Remember, for those who say, anybody say V'yitein lecha on Saturday night? Anybody ever say that? That's one of these other minhagim that went the way of the dodo bird. That I think used to be a common minhag. Tov, if you're still here, do they say it at the Beit? I know the Beit used to say it. I don't know if they still say it. The big shul in Thornhill. Saturday night, V'yitein lecha, this long thing. Who has patience on Saturday night?
I don't know if they say it. I'm never at the Beit Saturday night.
I know, so next time you go to the Beit Saturday night, last time I actually like to say it. Of course, I never say it because, I don't stay in shul on myself and say it. But when I am in a shul that says it once every 5 years, then I say it's beautiful. V'yitein lecha is beautiful, beautiful tefillah. We say it Saturday night. V'yitein lecha mitala shemayim mishmanei aretz v'rav dagam George. We quote, and then we quote that famous. The statement in Gemara in Megillah, Koma Kom Shatamatse Gedulato Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where you find the greatness of God. I can never pronounce it. Shamatamotse An Vitunatos. There you find His humility. And they Zavar Zeh Katub Mikra. How do they say it? Shanui be. It's in Torah, Nevi'im, Uktuvim, and they quote 3 psukim that shows greatness of God. What's the greatness of God? That He's humble. Great people don't care about the widow, the orphan, the poor. That's the greatness of God. The awesomeness of God is that He loves the stranger. It's such a beautiful idea, really so beautiful. And of course, now you understand why Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, Rav Soloveitchik's grandfather, or maybe Rabbi Soloveitchik is Rav Chaim's grandson, but whatever, said that the job of the rabbi, I've said many times, the job of the rabbi is to take care of the widow, the orphan, and the poor. That's the rabbi is a social worker. That's it, not a lamdan. A Rosh Yeshiva can be a lamdan. This is Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, who revolutionized Gemara learning. It's very nice. Gemara is very nice. But much more important, to close that Gemara, take care of the widow, the orphan, and the poor. Of course, take care of everybody else too, but you have to start there. So that's Ram ben Isa Mashpil Geim. Umagbia shifalim. He raises, he lowers the arrogant ones. Umagbia, and he raises the shifalim, those who are low, those who are looked down upon. He raises them. Motzia sirim. He frees the captives. Halavai. Upodeh nabim. Again, he redeems the humble. Ozer Dalim, he helps the poor. Onela mo beit shavai. He answers the nation when we cry out to him. So this is a hard thing to say because we don't always see it. Onela amo, he answers his nation beit shavai when we cry out to him. Could say he answers with a no, right? That's what they say a lot. God hears all our tilot, but sometimes he says no. Okay. But still, I don't think that's what it means. In other words, the authors of this were not saying, okay, yeah, God's going to listen and say no. What they mean is God responds to us. But we all know, okay, that's an all problem. That's a big philosophical issue, of course. And I will get to it. Okay, I'll wait till we get to the Shmon Esrei, but I'll just allude to it now. You know how Daniel and Yirmiyahu didn't say the full Shmon Esrei, right? The Gemara tells us that they refused to say Hagibor v'Hanora. I'll do it maybe inside in a couple of weeks, please, God, when we get to Shmon Esrei. But just since we're on the topic, and it's worth repeating, the Gemara, I won't go through the whole Gemara, but the Gemara basically says that Daniel and Yirmiyahu refused to say one Gibor, one Hanora, because it wasn't true. Because the non-Jews destroyed the temple, Jews are so what do you mean God's not great? The Jewish people are suffering. It's such an unbelievable Gemara. It's mind-boggling. It's a mind-boggling Gemara. And that's why it's called the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. That's the Gemara is discussing why are the men of the Great Assembly, the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, the people who restored the Knesset, right? The modern day Israeli Knesset has 120 people, because the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah had 120 people. It's a beautiful idea. It's a beautiful idea that the Ben Gurion and all his anti-religious people who used to eat on Yom Kippur, no, we have a Knesset where we look back to our history. The Anshe Knesset Hagdolah had 120 people. They reestablished a Jewish Commonwealth. We're going to have 120 people, and we're also going to call it a Knesset. Maybe it's the Knesset Haktana, but it's still a Knesset. Okay. Yeah, Zev got that one. Okay, I think. Anyway, so that is, and so the Gemara says they're called Anshe Knesset Hagdolah because they return. They said, no, we should say Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor. It's like unbelievably powerful idea. Now, I say this all the time. Someone who's a Holocaust survivor that's saying they can't daven, they can't thank God. I think that's exactly what the Gemara was saying. Enachinami. And when the Gemara asked, how could they do that? How can Yirmiyah and Daniel take out what Moshe said? Well, what are they? Reform rabbis? Well, how could they do this? So the Gemara says, they're people of truth. God is truth, and you have to say what's truth. If you don't believe it, if you don't believe God is great, you can't say it. So that's what the Gemara says. It's like mind-boggling. Okay, we'll go over that. I give you something to look into. Yocheved, you don't like what I said, or you want? It's a Gemara in Yuma 69b, I believe.
No, I have a question. The davening. It's actually not my question, it's my father's question, and I never had an answer for him. So he asked us once, why in the middle of Ezras Avosenu we seem to have a random pasuk that doesn't fit into the flow. Ashrei isha yishmalo mitzvosecha v'sarascha udvarcha yasim al libo. Like in the middle of discussing God's greatness and his power, and
so hopefully we'll come back to the where I mean, I'm already out of order, but once I'm out of order, we're doing here the second half. So let's just finish here. So
I thought we were at the end already. So
no, because I actually will do a few things back there. I skipped Ezra Avotenu. I just pointed out overall the theme. It repeats our fathers, our ancestors. We'll come back to that. And then I said it ends up with Egypt. So whatever, I was talking about Egypt. So I'm going through how the whole last third or whatever, maybe more than a third of the bracha talks all about Egypt. So that's what we're doing now. I'll come back to the other part, I hope. And so I'm saying, but it's a whole story, it took us out of Egypt. And then it talks about, in the sea. So we are the humble ones who God loves, and the Egyptians are the arrogant ones. They think they can do whatever they want. They can enslave people. That's a sign of arrogance. Right? So God redeems us. I'm saying, God answers the prayers of the Jewish people. So historically, it's true. In other words, if you assume, which is the simple pshat of what we're saying here, that we're describing the Exodus, So at the time of the Exodus, right? Remember, God says to Moshe, so like, I'm not praying already. You prayed enough, just go, just move into the sea. That's how, Rashi understands it. That's what the Chumash says. So you could say in the historical context, Onel Amo is talking about the Yamsu, but I think, of course, like everything in the Siddur, we're not everything in the Torah. We're not concerned so much with the historical events. We're concerned the Torah wasn't written to tell history; it was written for current events. The Torah is written to tell us how to live our life. But nonetheless, historically, you can say if you have a problem, it's God doesn't always answer our prayers. It's not always true, but unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, maybe it is better. God doesn't always answer our prayers. It depends what we pray for. But anyway, but at least historically, Onel Amo Beit Shavam Elav, and then we say Tilot L'Elyon. Again, we're going to praise God. Baruch Hu Umvarach, He's blessed. Moshe b'nei Israel, and now we're going to talk history. Moshe, the Jewish people, Lecha nushi Rabbi Simcha Rabav Amru Chulam, and then we quote the Shira, Micha Mocha Beili Moshe, Micha Mocha Nedar B'Kodesh. That's Shirat Hayam, right? This is exact. All we're doing here is once again, we already did it in Psukei Zimra. We say the whole Yashir, but remember, Psukei Zimra was like a much later addition to the Siddur. Psukei Zimra was an act of piety added much later. Presumably, this was done much, much earlier. And so they have this quoted, and then their quote, we crossed the sea, we gave thanks to God. We then quote the whole Shirah. We say, how great is God? No, there are no other gods as great as God. That in itself, for another time. But, when we say God is the greatest of God, Elohei, Elohim, what does it mean? It means there are other gods and God is greater than them. We'll leave that as an aside. I mean, it's an important aside for those who are interested in but Micha Mocha, who is like you in the gods? Micha Mocha Beilim Hashem, right? It's sort of a funny expression, but that's what they say. And sure, listen, for sure in the historical context, it makes a lot of sense. In the Jewish philosophical concept, it has to mean something else. But in the historical context, when Egypt, Par said, I my list of gods, he had a Rolodex, he had the sun god Ra, and the Nile god and the beetle god. No, they all these gods. That was the ancient world. Yeah, it makes sense. In other words, I don't know if anybody. I'll put a minute. I don't know if anybody listened to my podcast that I did on Kitisa. So I talked about how it's inevitable the Jewish people are going to do Avodah Zarah. What do you mean? Everybody asked the question, why? How is it that the Jewish people could worship idols, could bow down to idols for 4 days? So I said, it's the opposite question. How couldn't they? They've been slaves for 200 years. Moshe Rabbeinu leaves them for 40 days. Have you heard of your mind? When he leaves them for 40 days, what does he think is going to happen? Obviously, they're going to worship idols. That's how you worship God. They didn't. We need a God. That's what they said. It wasn't. I mean, it was. You have to listen. I don't want to say whether maybe you don't, but anyways. So in the God, there were many gods. Why shouldn't you believe there are many gods? But obviously, we can't believe that. But that's what the Torah comes along to teach us. Why should we think evil comes from God? That's what when it's discussed earlier. One of the things you're not allowed to say. We're discussing repetition. So modim you can't say, and you can't say we only mention God for good. The bad also comes from God. You make a bracha dayan emet. We make bless God for the good and the bad. So, but there's a certain logic. Yeah, of course, God is all good. So bad comes from a different God. It's very logical. We're just, thank God. It's like when the Rambam, nobody today thinks that God had a body. Nobody, no, I don't know if anybody, any human being thinks that God has a body. Nobody educated thinks that. But that's only because the Rambam was so successful in eradicating that belief from humanity. But before the Rambam, the Ravid, we've mentioned a number of times, when the Rambam says that somebody believes God has a body, is a heretic. So the Ravid says, Mr. Rambam, please. And the language is so powerful. It says, Gedolin v'tovim imcha. There's a Hilchot Tshuva, the laws of repentance, chapter 3. It's you can go look it up. The Ravid says, I'm sorry, Gedolim v'tovim, people greater and better than you thought that God had a body. Because it says in the Torah, God took us out of Egypt with a strong hand. He has the eyes of God. So we all know it's we all know it's a metaphor. Well, why is it a metaphor? Maybe that's what it means. Now, and all the commentaries point out the Ravid actually agrees with the Rambam. The Ravid agreed God in that body, but he didn't think it's heretical. Okay, I think God didn't have a body, but it's okay to think God had a body. Today, you say that, you're out of your mind, and everybody will call you a heretic. The Rambam says that's the third, I think, of the 13 principles of the Rambam in Yigdal. They don't say Yigdal in my shul anymore. That's another thing they changed. Okay, no. But anyways, so things get changed, but there is a certain great logic to thinking that there are many gods. There's the good God, our God is the good, and the good God defeated that. It sounds like with Paro. I don't know if this God, that's what Paro says. Okay, God said, I'm going to make 10 plagues. I mean, I'm shortening the story. You'll know who God is. You'll know who God is. But so for Paro, so in the context of talking to the Egyptians and the Jewish people, it's very easy to say, God is the greatest of all gods, because that's what they believe. And what did the Jewish people say? We'll read tomorrow. Build for us a calf to be our God. We need a God. In other words, the Jewish people, even after the Seder Dibra, didn't fully understand. Seder Dibra came to tell us there's one God, can't have other God, but it doesn't happen overnight. Can't take a group of slaves for 200 years and expect them in 40 days to all of a sudden have this conception of God. So clearly, it was inevitable that the Jewish people were going to worship the golden God. So that's what I talk about if you want to listen in the podcast, why that's so. But anyways, sorry if I put in a little plug, but why not? Okay, so Hashem. So we're repeating the Shira Chadasha, Shibku Gulim. We sang a new song, right? With fervor, because that was a new song. Every day we should sing new song. The Shimcha Al Svarayam, to your name, to the glory of God. Al Svarayam on the edge of the river. Yachad Kulam, all together. The Jewish people are all together. That's the most important thing for Judaism, that we are together. Nothing else matters. I mentioned that the Meshach Chachma points out the pasuk in Achremot. We read it on Yom Kippur. What better day to read it than on Yom Kippur? And Parshat Achremot, which is the worship, the avod of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, the pasuk there says, "Hashocheni tam b'toch tumatam." God dwells among its impurities. And the Meshach Chachma, Rav Meir Simcha Advins, the great commentary, died in 1926, I believe. And his commentary on the Chumash, he's a big believer in the unity, like anybody, everybody is. The importance of the unity. In other words, the greater importance of unity as opposed to religious observance, much more important, right? Like the Dor HaMabul, because they stole money. That's why God decided to bring the flood, the stealing. Dor HaFlaga, they challenged God, idolatry. God can live with idolatry. God forgave us for the golden calf. He didn't forgive us for Beit HaMaraglim, right? It's all over the place that God is much, 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 much more concerned with the unity of the Jewish people than even religious practice that we spoke about, the Netziv and Sefer HaYashar that we spoke about a couple weeks ago. Avram praying for storm. It's the idea to get along with people. And the people in the Second Temple, they were righteous, but they didn't get along with one another. God couldn't stand it. That's what the Netziv writes. So here too, the Meshach Chachma writes, that God, if you have impurity, but as long as the Jewish people are united, God can tolerate it. I mean, it's not good. I'm not recommending it, but God doesn't get so upset. But it's when the Jewish people are divided that they're not. So Yachad Kulam, maybe tomorrow when you say it, think about that a lot. Coming together, Yachad Kulam is a really, really, really important idea, and it's been the Achilles tendon of or whatever that expression is, right? The Achilles heel, right, of the Jewish people. That's a Greek tragedy, no, of the Jewish people for 2,000 years. That our inability to come together. We fight way too much, and the Orthodox community fights more than any other community. With the divisions and subdivisions and 98 divisions. Anyways, but
What's the pasuk? I missed it. That the Meshach.
Maybe I'm not gonna. I'll have to look it up. And it's in Achremot. Perek, I think it's 15th or 16th Perek. In the beginning of Achremot, the reading we do on Yom Kippur. I mentioned before, I forgot to ask Rav Schechter. I meant to ask him when I saw him last week when I was in YU. So I said I have to ask him when he told us once in Shir that some Achron quoted, I don't remember who it was. He quoted one of the Achronim who said it's better to put an idol in the middle of a shul than to have machloket. Machloket is worse. Let them put a pestle in the middle of the shul. No. But machloket is the worst. What can I tell you? What can that's the Rav Chaim. I was just reading it. It came up again. Rav Chaim Balazhin. I remember the story. They asked him to get involved in a machloket and some issue with shochet. He said, "Listen, the whole issue with the meat, that's only a rabbinic issue. Machloket, it's a biblical prohibition. No. So you eat non-kosher meat, rabbinically non-kosher meat. No. That's nowhere near as bad as having a fight. He is kosher, isn't kosher. Machloket, this one fighting with that one. What can I tell you? But again, we have to know how to disagree. You have to be like even right when remember we learned this in Pirkei Avot. A machloket that's for the purpose of heaven. So fali kayem. Give me an example of a machloket l'shem shemayim, everybody.
Hillel and Shammai.
Hillel and Shammai.
Notice it doesn't say Beit Hillel or Beit Shammai.
Very
the
good.
Original.
Yeah, why doesn't it say Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai?
Because they even intermarried. They married each other. They
So
still
why
saw each
doesn't
other
it say that was a
people.
machloket? So
They
for
saw
sure,
each other as people.
It was Hillel and Shammai themselves did it l'shem Shammai, but their followers may not have
That's
had that.
correct. That's look at the Tiferet
Right.
Yisrael. Look at the Tosfot Yontif there on the Mishnah. He points. It's obvious, but he just points it out. Eze machloket l'shem Shemaim zu machloket Hillel v'Shammai. Not Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai wasn't machloket l'shem Shemaim. Now, I think it's not like yes or no. Like there's a level. So I would say Beit Hillel Beit Shammai was 80% the Shem Shemaim. I know, like I don't want to compare the machloket Beit Hillel Beit Shammai to our machlokets of today. We're way less the Shem Shemaim. But they weren't the Shem Shemaim. How do I know that? The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that. There are two contradicting Gemaras, but the Gemara in Sanhedrin 88a, I believe 88a or B, maybe it's B. I forget if it's Amud Aleph or Beit. I think it's Amud Beit. But anyways, the Gemara there says, how did machloket begin? So they said that basically what the Gemara says is the Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai lo shimshu kol tzorcham. They didn't fully pay attention. They didn't fully serve their masters, and they had all kinds of machloket, and it wasn't so l'shem shemayim. That's what he quotes. It wasn't so they weren't paying attention. Since it's a different, not the Shem Shemaim there. In other words, they're not being the Shem Shemaim scenes. In other words, one of them was wrong. They didn't pay attention close enough. They didn't serve the Shemaim well enough, so they made mistakes. So you can't say it's a machlok of the Shem Shemaim. That's different than people arguing for ulterior motives for their honor. It's a different, not the Shem Shemaim. But nonetheless, the Mishnah is very clear. They only say machloket Hillel and Shammai. They don't say Beit Hillel and Shammai. Now there is a second Gemara in Eruvin that does says Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. These and those are the words of the living God are said by both Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. So clearly Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, they weren't like I say, they weren't like not the Shem Shemaim at all. But even they didn't fully reach the level of machloket l'shem shemaim, and that's what Rav Shechter told us. That at the same time when he told us to put a statue in the temple, he said there hasn't been a machloket l'shem shemaim in 500 years. No, 500 years, I would say 2,000 years, but okay, he was being lenient. And I quoted this before. No, if there hasn't been a machloket l'shem shemaim in 500 years, that means the machloket between the Misnagdim and the Chasidim and the machloket on the Musar movement, all these machlokets are not the Shem Shemaim. It's very hard to have a machloket the Shem Shemaim. But anyways, that doesn't mean we have to agree on anything. We spoke about last week. Go to Breuer's, go to Vitro, go to Perpetual.
Rabbi Kelman?
Yes.
Machloket the Shem Shemaim always only on halachic matters, or could it be something about the welfare of the people? Which would make it
it can be about anything. I mean, usually those arguments are, I don't. How do you distinguish between halakha and not halakha? It's an interesting question. You saw when I shared my screen, you may have seen very quickly, thing came up on Liknim Mishur today. It's because that's what I'm teaching now in chat, one of my classes. So the question is Liknim Mishur part of the halakha or not part of the halakha? You have to go beyond the law, but that's a law. The laws you have to do beyond the law. So it's not being, in other words, are you obligated? It's not so clear. That's a big machloket. So when you say, like, is it only halakha matters? I don't know that that's like a real distinction in halakha. Like, what's the distinction in halakha and agadah? Is agadah binding, not binding? It's not so clear. This is a huge topic. But I would say the concept, yes, a machlok l'shem shemaim can apply that anything that affects the Jewish people. That doesn't mean we can't have disagreements. Don't get me wrong. We can disagree, but it's how you disagree. It's hard. I always think it's really hard to have a machlok l'shem shemaim. Listen, I quoted this in my class this week, one of the other classes. This week was elections in Israel, right? Nobody paid attention. More than half the Israelis didn't vote. I saw David Horowitz had an article in Times of Israel, the whole democracy protest. They brought the country for 9 months every Sunday night. Democracy, democracy, democracy. Not blaming them. Isn't it amazing that they had an election and less than 50% of the people voted? But it was, okay, it's the middle of a war. I understand, whatever. So election was once less. So I quoted, there's halach in the Shulchan Aruch. It's an amazing halacha. It's like unbelievable. Maybe it's so unbelievable. I'll show it to you in maybe. It says that when you vote, it's in Choshen Mishpat, Siman 163 in Choshen Mishpat. So it's talking about the laws of neighbors. There are laws of neighbors, me and your neighbor. You build a fence. It's laws of who pays tax. I want to have a library in the city, and you don't want to have a library. So I can force you. That's what it says what can the minority force the majority to do with their tax dollars? So you have all these halachas. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. Very important for modern times. This is all in the Shulchan Aruch. We're so busy focused on, ritual, we don't pay attention to the broader areas of the Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch says you have a debate. The townspeople meet. The 200 families living in a big city. They're deciding how to budget their revenue. So there's a debate what to do. So the Shulchan Aruch says, the Ramah writes, everybody comes together and everybody expresses their opinion. Beautiful. Everybody gets to express their opinion. And then you take a vote. A majority democracy. But I slipped out 2 words. How do you have to vote? So the Ramah Paskins, it's like, it's mind-boggling. He says you have to vote l'shem shemaim. You have to vote l'shem shemaim. What does it mean to vote l'shem shemaim? I'll tell you what it means. What do you mean to vote l'shem shemaim? You're in the oil and gas business, and the government's going to have a carbon tax. You don't like that because it's going to cost you more money. But you know that your oil and gas is destroying the economy. So it's good for the country. You really do know that. You can maybe not know. You can maybe think not, but But for me, it's good A. But for everybody, it's good B. So the halach is you have to vote B. Can you imagine this? Can you imagine telling somebody in America they have to vote not to what's your best interest? You have to vote what's in the best interest of heaven, of our society. It's like mind-boggling. This is ridiculous. That's halach in the Shulchan Aruch. I wrote about this once before the Ontario election a few years ago. I sent it out my email list. I think it's the least observed halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. I can't. Maybe I can make a list of the top 10 halachot that are most ignored in the Shulchan Aruch, but this got to be up there. That you vote for the sake of heaven. You don't vote what's good for you. You vote what's. It's great if what's good for you aligns with what's good for the community. But we all know this. You're very wealthy, please God. That would be nice. You should. I mentioned it. I feel almost like crazy to mention this. We had an election recently for mayor of Toronto. So I voted for the mayoral candidate. Those who live in Toronto will easily figure out who I voted for. I voted for the mayoral candidate who said they're raising property taxes. Because we're not going to raise property taxes. What do you mean you're not going to raise property taxes? Our city's falling apart. We don't have enough police. We don't have enough public transit. Our roads are falling apart. We need more tax dollars. Where are we getting tax dollars from? The only place the city gets tax dollars, property. I'm sorry, if you own a house, you can pay more tax. So for 20 years, they've always kept Toronto is one of the lowest property taxes in Ontario, and it's way lower than in New York. I hear what people pay in Teaneck, pay $30,000, $40,000 in property tax, I think. Am I mistaken? I don't know. Correct me. $20,000, $30,000 in property tax in Teaneck is normal. Here we pay, I don't know, $6,000, $7,000. Canadian, of course, but okay, that's we earn Canadian dollars. But we have to raise money. So, and I remember somebody sent out people, whoa, don't vote for this person. She wants to raise our taxes. I said, great. Now, obviously, I would prefer paying less tax, but I understand that it's better that actually, I'm thinking more long term, because it's not good for a city if people can't afford to live in it. Even for me, it's better, but in the immediate short term, of course, everybody likes to pay less tax. So that's halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. You got to do so that's what l'shem shemaim means. So now you know how hard it is. When I say you have to, we don't have machlok l'shem shemaim. Now you begin to understand. But l'shem shemaim is not just I mean it for the sake of heaven. It's tough. I mean, that's, again, they're different in every context. The Shem Shemaim might mean something else, but the Machlok L'Shem Shemaim is really hard. There's some people, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach never got involved in Machloket. That's why he's Rav Shlomo Zalman, Rav Moshe Feinstein. You ever hear Rav Moshe? People attacked Rav Moshe, they yelled at him, screaming, he just... you have thick skin. So people disagree. You have to express your opinion. That's also part of the halacha. You have to be intellectually honest, but people fighting, and you have to do what's good for the community. So whatever, Yachad Kulam is really important. I don't know what to say. What can I tell you? We're way too focused on ritual and not enough focused on the social interaction among Jews. It's much easier. Ritual is much easier to focus. It's much easier to be machmir in Shabbos and Kashrut. It's so much easier, and to dress in a certain way and to put barriers and et cetera, and everybody does this. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so and then we say Yacha Kulam Oduvin Hashem Yimloch L'Olam Ved. That's also from Shirat Hayam. Right, this is Michamoch and Hashem Yimloch L'Olam Ved. That's why we quote these psukim, right? Because they're fitting into the theme. I'm going to leave Sur Yisrael because that I guess we'll get to probably. I don't know if we'll get to this week. Then we'll talk about the Gulat Sur Yisrael. And why do we use the term Sur Yisrael, the Rock of Israel, Sur Yisrael? Okay, but we'll do that right at the end. I want to go back the part I skipped a little bit. And maybe answer Yochevet's question about why we stick a pasuk in the middle. I'm not sure. I didn't actually think of that question, but I was going to talk about it, but not in the context of why the pasuk is added. So I said that it's quite repetitive. We're going back now towards the beginning of Emet V'Yatziv, and we're going to after we say Hadavar Zel Olam Ved. We're just after the first 15 words. Then we go Emet, right? Elohei Olam Malkeinu. God is our king. Tzur Yaakov Magen Sheni. So I just want to point out how many times we talk about the eternity of this idea. L'dor vador hu kayam. God exists for generation to generation. U'malchuto v'emunato la'at kayamat. The kingdom and the trustiness of God is forever. Dvarav chayim v'kayamim. God's word is permanent. La'ad ol olmei olamim. For now and forever. Alavotenu v'aleinu was the same idea for our forefathers and for us and our children. Al banenu v'al doratenu v'al dorat Yisrael, and all the generation. Al rishonim v'al achronim, on the first ones and the later ones. Davar tov le'olam va'ed, forever. Then we don't have it for, actually we go a few words without saying that. That's pretty amazing. I mean, koch lo yavor. Now we describe God. From the beginning of time, you've always been the one who redeems us. And then we start next paragraph. God, you are the one who helps us, helped our fathers forever. To their children, l'dor vador, b'chol dor vador. Where else do we have it? That's about it. We stop at how many times is that? Over and over again? Over and over again. This idea from forever and ever, God is true, God is response to us. And then we went into the Egyptian thing. Then we go to the whole thing about Egypt. Why do we do this? I don't know. It's just interesting. They want to stress it a lot. Repetition, they want to stress. What are we stressing? Emet v'Yatziv, that God is true, his promise is true. Is the affirmation of faith, the Shema is true, right? We're affirming over and over, and that God redeems us. This is the bracha of Geula, Potenu Matzelenu, right? Malkeinu Goelenu Goel Avotenu. It's all about God's amazing relationship with Jewish people. So I think, I know in modern times, we'll say that if somebody says something too often, it's not so good. It means, they say it so much because it's not true. In other words, that's how you make a lie. But God forbid that should be the case here. But I do think, I mentioned a few weeks ago that I think the assumption is, or I read that this bracha was composed right after the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. And it's a response. So you understand, in talking to Jews who just experienced, it's like Holocaust survivors. That's what it was. The year 70 was the Holocaust of that time. I mean, our Holocaust was worse. There was no worse, but still, it was pretty bad. Lots of Jews got killed. We lost the state of Israel. I mean, it was pretty bad. So the idea that God is trustworthy and we had to stress the idea God redeemed our fathers, he will redeem us. I think in a historical context, it makes a lot of sense that we're stressing over and over God's constant relationship with the Jewish people, how he's a redeemer, he's a savior. You can say the fact that we're here, right? We defy all the laws of history. We don't belong here. Well, how can the Jewish people survive? That's the miracle of Jewish system. We often look at the negative, but so I think perhaps that's why, I don't know for sure, I think that's why we say over and over this theme of, you just see it all over the place. Dor v'dor, Hu Kayam, Shmo Kayam, God is permanent, Hu Kayam, his name is permanent, Kison Achon, okay, his chair is correct, Umalchuto Ad Kayam, and it's going to be forever. Now, so I wanted to talk about, okay, so that's what it's Dvarav Chayim v'Kayamim. Just want to spend like 2 minutes on that. We say God Dvarav Chayim v'Kayamim. God's words are alive, Chayim v'Kayamim. What's the difference between Chay v'Kayam, Melech al Chay v'Kayam? Right? Chay is alive, Kayam is permanent. I assume Chay means today and Kayam means in the future. That's what I assume it means. I don't know anybody else have any different explanation, you can let me know. But I assume, again, it's similar. You can say they both mean the same thing on a certain level. But I think Dvarav Chayim means now in Kayamim, it will be established forever. But and what's Dvarav? When we say Dvarav, what does that mean? His words, that's how I have the Quran open in front of me. His words live and persist. Okay, that's sort of what I said. Live and persist. What is Dvarav? So Dvarav is Torah. The words of God are expressed through the Torah. The Torah is permanent, kayamim, nemanim v'nechmadim. It's faithful and beloved, right? But I think the idea of chai v'kayam is the idea that ein lecha ela shofet asher b'yamecha, right? This idea, that it's a big problem we have. I remember Rav Schachter telling us, it comes as a shock to a lot of people. We don't believe in precedent. I know that's, what are you out of your mind? That's all we do. We say, what did some rabbi say 100 years ago? And I remember Rav Schachter telling us, he was listening to the Eichmann trials before my time, I guess in 61. And he had a judge from Idaho or something was quoting, and he was quoting a case that was decided in Idaho 100 years ago and using it to practice here. I don't know what exactly, but remember that's what he was telling us. He's telling us in secular law, in American law, you go to the Supreme Court and you argue. There's the case, from Wyoming in 1932, Goldberg, whatever, versus the state, and the Supreme Court of Wyoming ruled X, and that's like a really strong argument. The Supreme Court, they'll return it, maybe they will, but it's very hard. We have very much in precedent. And he said Judaism doesn't have such a strong view in precedent. That's Rav Moshe Feinstein's introduction to this Igrod Moshe, that I'm going to disagree with many rabbis who are greater than me. With the Gemara, it's a different story. We're not going to talk about that now. Why we can't argue with the Gemara is not so simple. When we assume we can't argue on the Gemara, once you're post-Gemara, okay, I don't want to get with the Rambam. Let's take modern times. It'll be easier. We can discuss those important subjects another time. Rav Moshe writes this, I'm going to disagree with the Khatam Sofer. Khatam Sofer lived 200 years ago. Okay, I can disagree with him. And he said, I'm not as great as him. That doesn't matter. I'm entitled to an opinion. Judaism, why am I telling you this? So, because the Torah says you have to go to the judge of that time. So, what, are you going to a dead judge? So unfortunately today, yes, some people do go to a dead judge, but that's what it means. The Torah is a living document. And in a living document, I always say, what's the definition of halacha? This is what I teach. I'm going now in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, is my contemporary halacha class in grade 12. So the first class of the year. What is halacha? How do you define halacha?
What, halicha, halicha to move, like going?
So halacha is Jewish law, right? But that's not what it means. It means to walk, right? So it's the way we walk, very good, natural. But what is halacha? What the term halacha? So I have a definition of halacha. You can tell me if you disagree with it. That the halacha is the interaction of a unchanging Torah to an ever-changing reality. The Torah never changes, but the halacha is the intersection of life and Torah. Life always changes, so the halacha has to change. When people say the halacha doesn't change, we just discussed at the beginning. Today you have to say Shema when you get married. In the time of Gemara, you weren't allowed to say Shema when you get married. Well, what happened? So the halacha. Well, that's why when rabbis get up and say the halacha never changes, like I cringe. Like, get out of here. You know the halacha changes all the time. There are 500 halachas in the Shulchan Aruch we don't follow. Look, and I told you in the Mishnah Berurah, Rav Shachter told us. I told you the first time we read the Mishnah Berurah, his hair stood on edge. The Mishnah Berurah changes the halakha in the Shulchan Aruch on every page. The Shulchan Aruch said, "Yeah." The Mishnah said, "Yeah, but we have here, we have there." So he has a nice long beard, and he was a tzaddik and pious, and he usually does it to be more strict in the Shulchan Aruch. So it's okay. It's kosher, but of course halakha changes all the time, and Torah never changes. But halakha is not Torah. Halakha is the Dvarav Chayim v'Kayamim. It makes the Torah living and permanent. The way you make, if the Torah is that's Torah in motion, right? That's that's what it means. If Torah is static, it's a dead Torah. A Torah Chayim is a Torah that's moving. A living person, a living organism moves. But what does that mean? It means you have to have a posek in our time. Of course, we look what the Chatam Sofer, we have respect, but you're not bound by them. Today, there's too much respect. Like another thing, I know I'm going to Rosh Hashanah, but listen, he knows Kol Torah Kula. But so he told us, Lo tagur mifnei ish. You're not. That's a law in Sefer Dvarim. You're not allowed to be afraid of anybody. The dayan, the judge, has to rule. What you think is, he says differently. I don't care what he says. You're not. It means that way. It also means you're not afraid some guy's going to put a gun to your head. That's a question. If you really think he's going to put a gun to your head, maybe you are allowed to not issue a ruling. But you're not allowed to be afraid of their political consequences. They're going to get mad at you in shul. They're going to throw your kids out of school because you ruled in a certain way. So I think it was the Vilna Gaon. I think that's what he told us. The Vilna Gaon said, Rav Yosef Karo was also an ish. Lo tagur mifnei ish. And great poskim disagree. I just told you the Mishnah Berurah. So people disagree with the Shulchan Aruch. Me, who am I? I'm going to disagree with the Shulchan Aruch. But we, of course, we do. The Shulchan Aruch was not meant as the final word. Today, so many people, they're so caught up. That's why we have an oral tradition. We're focused too much on the written tradition. There's a lot to speak about that some other time, right? So we have I think that's what it means. Dvarav Chayim v'Kayamim. The words of the Torah are now and Kayam, but they're alive. Now, and that's, I think, the only way we can keep the halakha alive permanently is by making it, by understanding the reality. That's the first job of any posek will tell you that. Any good posek, he wouldn't be a posek if he didn't know that. Every posek knows that you don't just look up and you paskin. The halacha is reacting to reality, right? The fact how we treat Mechalei Shabbos today, that's the famous truth of the Binyan Sion, right? 1861, right? Mechalei Shabbos, the Gemara says, you throw them out. They're goyim, they're kofrim, they're lowlifes, they're atheists. So what are you talking about? It's not true today. It's a different reality, and the reality to be Mechalei Shabbos too in the shtetl in Europe, where everybody's 100% Shomer Shabbos. That's very different than in the modern world. You cannot compare the two, and therefore the halacha has to have a different attitude. Anyways, that's much more to discuss. Let me do a quick review, and then we'll take our questions. We basically spoke about two things. We went through the whole Egypt idea, half the last third of the bracha, more as I was going through all the points. Beautiful, a recapitulation of the Egypt story. This is the bracha of Geula. We pointed out modesty. We pointed out some of the traits that we have. The permanence of God. Now, over and over, we're stressing our forefathers, us. This whole notion, the Shema, Torah, God's words are all forever. Forever, we say the historical context, just written after the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, but it's also very much for us. We discussed the Machloket, the Shem Shemaim, how difficult it is, and how important it is to be L'Shem Shemaim, and how so important it is to be Yachad Kulam. We have to be together, and it's okay to sing songs that the words repeat themselves every once in a while. That only Modim you're not allowed to say. But just, okay, let me quickly go through the chat, and then I'll take oral questions. Rav Moshe Tarragon said that the tzniut means not thinking a lot of yourself, making room for God. Okay, yeah, we said that God has to leave the room if you're arrogant. I think it's the exact same idea. The opposite of yuhara. That's correct. Yuhara is arrogance. Thank you. By the way, they are resuscitating the dodo bird. Really? Oh, cool. Well, maybe we'll resuscitate some of the halakot. Good. Okay. Quote from, are they really resuscitating a dodo bird? I just hope they don't resuscitate.
Yeah, they're using.
What was that movie on the dinosaur, Jay? Jurassic Park, wasn't that the movie? They got the dinosaur genes, then we're in big trouble. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, the Dola bird, that's fine. Okay, cool from Joshua Heschel. Zeus loves women, God loves widows. Okay, very nice. Thank you. Yes, God loves widows. That's what it says in the Chumash. That's what it means to be great. The greatness of God is taking care of the small people. The details in life. When Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai was given the 3 wishes, so he said, Yavne, let's save Judaism and find a doctor for Rav Tzadok. Beautiful. You can't forget the little things. Why is Shira called a new song? That's a good question. We'll have to pick up on that next week. Okay, thank you. I don't really have time. We say it at the Pesach Seder. I don't know that it's so significant, but we can just, I'll try to address that last week. I hope I remember. I have to write that down. Shira Chadashah, you remind me. Okay, yeah. But it's the idea I was expressing at the end, newness. B'chol yom yu be'enecha kachadashim. Torah's got to be renewed every day. And our praise of God. So I think it's very much connected to what we were talking about at the end. Avot 5:9-17, right? That's the Mishnah about Machlok and the Shem Shemaim. Better to have dollars to repair, maintain, as Hashem tasked us to do on the earth, and to spend even more dollars to rebuild. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about here. Repair, maintain, than to rebuild. Yeah, we should keep things in order. I don't know exactly if you want to clarify, Janine, but I think we shouldn't destroy and rebuild. We should repair for sure. Not being bound by precedent is a big impediment to going to Beitin for commercial expense. So what are you saying, Moshe? What are you saying, that the Beitin is very bound by precedent?
I'm saying is that when you go to civil court, there's some certainty of what the most probable outcome will be, but Basin doesn't tend to, except for maybe Basin in America, they don't
accept it at all. You're saying Beitin doesn't accept precedent at all, and that's not good.
Yeah. And they don't even publish. They don't even publish their decisions.
Right. So the Beitin of America publicizes their decisions.
Yeah, Beitin of America.
100%. I'm not saying you ignore it's hefker. Of course not. I'm saying, but just because some rabbi 100 years ago, some great rabbi, there's a difference
between halacha and Beitin.
That doesn't mean you have to follow. Just like the Supreme Court will overturn it. We allow mating cats, so that's one we don't like. But medical assistance in dying. Canada used to have didn't allow abortions. Henry Morgenthaler went to jail because he did abortions. Then he got the Order of Canada, the highest award you can get in Canada. So things change. Society changed. Whether we like it or not, it's not relevant. Society changes. So I think that's true in the Beitin too. In other words, obviously precedent, we don't uprule everything. But yes, you want the Beitin to have rules and regulation. Thank God the Beitin of America does that. Many of our Batei Dinim are, I don't want to say what they are. It's not good. It's not good. It's a big problem. It's a Chilul Hashem, actually. But the Beit in America, Baruch Hashem, that's one professionally. They have lawyers, people who know. Rabbi Wiseman, who's the Menal of the Beit Din. So he went to Columbia Law School, worked on Wall Street for a couple of years, has Yadin Smicha. That's what you need to be a Dayan in America. You have to know American law. You have to know. Anyways, okay. Very quickly, because I do have to go and teach. I can take 1 or 2 oral questions very, very quickly. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Debbie, let's Debbie ask. I know you had a lot of questions, so let's. If you don't mind, next week I'm happy. But Debbie, very quickly, because I do have to go.
I just had a thought about Chai V'Kayam that connected to what you were saying. That Chai is a verb that shows action and reflects change, while Kayam seems to be more the established and firm.
Very good. I was saying Kayam means for the future. You want to say Kayam is you have to balance
the foundation.
Beautiful. I like that very much. Yeah, you have to be rooted. What Morris was saying, really, a little bit. You have to be rooted. with the change, it's got to be
At the
modest.
change, right.
Okay, Sima, please, but Bakashan, then last question. I'm sorry, I have to run. In a couple of weeks, the schedule will change. I'll have a few extra minutes when we change the clock. But anyways, until then.
I have a question about tradition versus ritual. When you're teaching children about Judaism, you're going to teach them rituals because that's their foundation.
Kids love rituals. Kids love rituals. I hear that
because it's very concrete. But then, how do you de-emphasize?
Great question. Maybe we'll try to discuss it a few minutes. It's hard. I really do have to go, but I'll give Sima 20 seconds and then we'll pick up next week.
Rabbi, I'll just repeat something that I heard. I just got up from Shiva from my mom, who's Hebrew.
Baruch Dynamite. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. Her Hebrew name was Yachad.
Okay.
A very unusual Hebrew name. It was Yachad.
Wow.
And Steinmetz, who's the Rav at KJ now, probably from
Montreal.
Montreal. He had just come back from a mission in Israel, and he heard a beautiful Dvar Torah about the whole concept of Yachad, which is so popular in Israel, Yachad Na'avor, Yachad Nenatzeach. Yachad is an acronym for Yesh Chilukei Deot. And it's okay to have...
It is okay, just how it's beautiful.
But I like that. Have it in unity.
I'm going to come and say thank you very much for that, and they should have long life and happy vacation. Sorry to hear, and we should all of us should hear good news. Thank you, everybody. Shabbat shalom. Hope to see you soon. Learning, invite your friends. Thanks a lot. Shabbat shalom. Bye bye.